She was the daughter of one of the most infamous royal houses in all of Scripture. Raised in a palace where idolatry was policy and ruthlessness was simply how power survived. She watched her mother wield influence without restraint, watched prophets murdered to protect a foreign religion, watched a kingdom reshaped by force of will alone. And when her own moment came, she did not hesitate to use everything she had learned. Her name was Athaliah, and she remains the only woman ever to sit on the throne of Judah in her own name. A reign built on the murder of her own grandchildren and ended only by a secret kept inside the temple of God for 6 long years. This isn't a story celebrated for its hero's triumph from the very first page.
You will go to Israel, you will visit your cousin Joram, you will maintain the alliance I have built. Do exactly as I have instructed.
Corruption from one generation to the next, and about the quiet, patient faithfulness that finally stopped it after years of waiting in the shadows. Where Jezebel's story ends with a sudden, dramatic fall from a window, Athaliah's begins precisely where her mother's left off, picking up the same playbook of foreign idolatry and ruthless self-preservation, and carrying it to an even darker conclusion within her own family line. Athaliah was the daughter of Ahab, king of Israel, and almost certainly the daughter of Jezebel as well, raised in the very household that had institutionalized Baal worship across the northern kingdom and persecuted the prophets of the Lord without mercy. She inherited far more than royal blood from that upbringing. She inherited a worldview in which power justified its own methods, in which thrones were tools to be seized and held by whatever means necessary,
the palace hilltop,
and in which the worship of foreign gods was simply the price of political alliance.
Wedding procession, sounds of camel bells and donkey hooves on road, formal processional music playing.
Athaliah was given in marriage to Jehoram,
official proclamation,
son of King
formal
Jehoshaphat of
imperial
Judah,
orchestral
a union
music
meant to
playing
bind
a
the two
stately
kingdoms
wedding
together
ceremony.
in peace.
Construction
after
sounds of a
generations
foreign
rivalry.
shrine being built, stone
But the
cutting and
marriage
workers,
carried a cost
cold
no one
authoritative
fully
voice
reckoned with at the
directing,
time.
weak.
Scripture says plainly that Jehoram walked in the ways of the kings of Israel just as the house of Ahab had done, for he had married a daughter of Ahab, and he did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Athaliah did not assimilate into Judah's faith. She brought her family's religion and her family's ruthlessness with her, and Jehoram, perhaps eager to please his powerful wife or simply weak-willed by nature, let her influence reshape his reign. Early in his rule, Jehoram secured his throne by killing all of his own brothers, along with several of the officials of Israel. A chilling pattern that echoed exactly the kind of consolidation of power Athaliah's own family had practiced for generations. When Jehoram died after a long and painful illness unmourned by his people, who lit no funeral fire in his honor as they had for his ancestors, their son Ahaziah took the throne, but he was already deeply entangled in the same corrupted alliance. Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, encouraged him in doing wrong, and he walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother encouraged him to act wickedly. Scripture states without ambiguity about where the influence in that royal household truly originated. Ahaziah reigned only 1 year before he was killed during Jehu's violent purge of the house of Ahab, struck down while visiting his cousin Joram, king of Israel, becoming collateral damage in the very dynasty his mother's family had built. When Athaliah, the queen mother, received word that her son was dead, she did not retreat into mourning. She saw instead an opportunity. With Ahaziah gone, the throne of Judah technically belonged to one of his young sons, grandchildren of Athaliah herself, the rightful heirs of David's line stretching back through centuries of promise that God would never let that royal line be extinguished. But Athaliah was not interested in serving as a protective regent for a grandchild. She wanted the throne for herself, completely and without rival, and she was willing to do whatever her family's history had already proven she was capable of doing. Athaliah set about destroying the whole royal family of the house of Judah, ordering the systematic execution of her own grandchildren. the very children who carried her own blood, simply because their existence stood between her and absolute power. It was an act of staggering cruelty, a grandmother annihilating her own descendants, mirroring almost exactly the ruthless consolidation tactics practiced by her father and her husband before her, except taken to an even darker extreme, since this time the victims were not rivals or threats from outside the family, but infants and children from within it. For 6 years it appeared that her plan had succeeded completely. Athaliah ruled Judah alone, the only woman to claim the throne in her own name in the entire history of the kingdom, and the line of David, the line God had promised would never lack an heir. The line through which the Messiah himself was prophesied to come seemed to have been extinguished entirely by a single ruthless woman's ambition. But Scripture reveals that the destruction had not, in fact, been complete. Jehosheba, daughter of King Jehoram and sister of the murdered Ahaziah, herself a member of the very royal household under attack, acted in secret while the slaughter of the royal princes was underway, risking her own life in the process, since discovery would almost certainly have meant her own death alongside the nephews she was trying to save. She took Joash, the infant son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were about to be murdered, hiding him along with his nurse in a bedroom, away from Athaliah's sight. In what must have been a harrowing, fast-moving rescue carried out under the constant threat of discovery. Jehosheba was married to Jehoiada the priest, which gave her access to one of the only places in the kingdom that Athaliah's reach could not easily penetrate, the temple of the Lord itself, a sanctuary whose sacred status offered at least some measure of protection that an ordinary household could never have provided. Joash was kept hidden in the temple for 6 full years while Athaliah ruled the land above him, completely unaware that the very heir she believed she had eliminated was growing up only
You
a
will go
short
to Israel,
distance from
you
her
will
own
visit your
throne,
cousin Joram,
learning to
you will
walk,
maintain the alliance I have
speak, and
built,
presumably
do exactly
to
as I
understand
have
the law of God
instructed.
under the careful instruction of the priest who had taken him in. Protected by priests and shielded by the sacred walls of the house of God, the one place her authority as queen could not fully command. 6 years is a long time to keep a secret that significant, a long time for a child to be raised in hiding, a long time for Jehoiada and Jehosheba to live with the knowledge that a single slip, a single overheard conversation, a single moment of carelessness could undo everything and cost the boy his life along with their own. Their patience, sustained year after year with no guarantee of how or when it would end.
Construction sounds of a foreign shrine being built, stone cutting and workers, cold authoritative voice directing,
In the
weak
7th year,
Formal throne
Jehoiada
room
the
ceremony
priest
sounds,
decided
official
the time had come
proclamations,
to act.
formal
He
imperial
understood that
orchestral
hiding the
music
boy
playing a
indefinitely was
stately
not
wedding
enough.
ceremony.
Wedding
That a true
procession,
restoration
sounds of camel
David's line
bells and
required
donkey
not
hooves
just survival,
on road.
but a decisive,
Formal
carefully
processional music
planned
playing.
reclamation of the throne itself,
Imposing wind across the
executed in a
palace
single
hilltop.
coordinated move with
Distant
no room for
sounds of
hesitation
foreign
or failure.
idol worship rituals from
He sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Carates and the guards, and brought them into the temple of the Lord, making a covenant with them and putting them under oath in the house of the Lord before he showed them the king's son at last, revealing to a trusted circle of military leaders that the heir they had assumed was dead had been alive and growing the entire time, a revelation that must have struck each of them with a mixture of astonishment and renewed hope for the kingdom's future. Jehoiada organized the guards with meticulous care, dividing them into groups assigned to different points around the temple and the palace, ensuring that no single point would be left undefended, and that Athaliah would have no opportunity to rally a counterattack once the plan was set in motion. Some were stationed to guard the temple itself, others positioned at the palace gates. Still others tasked with surrounding the young king directly, a layered defense designed to anticipate every possible way the plot could unravel. He distributed spears and shields that had belonged to King David himself, weapons kept in the temple as sacred relics of the dynasty's founding, A deliberate symbolic choice meant to remind everyone present exactly which royal line was being restored that day, and to tie this moment unmistakably back to the covenant God had made with David generations earlier. On the appointed day, the guards took their positions all around the temple, forming a protective ring, and Jehoiada brought out the king's son, placed the crown on him, and presented him with a copy of the covenant, the law of God that every king of Israel was meant to govern by. A pointed contrast to the reign of idolatry Athaliah had imposed for 6 years. They anointed him and clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king!" The noise of the celebration, the trumpets, the shouting crowd, the sound of an entire restoration unfolding in real time, reached Athaliah in the palace, and she came at once to the temple of the Lord to see what was happening, walking directly into a crowd she had no idea was about to turn entirely against her. Perhaps assuming at first that the commotion was nothing more than an ordinary festival or disturbance she could quickly silence with her presence alone, as she likely had done many times before during her 6 years of unchallenged rule. When she arrived and saw the young king standing by the pillar as was the custom, with the officers and the trumpeters beside him, and all the people of the land rejoicing and blowing trumpets, Athaliah immediately understood the magnitude of what had happened. She tore her royal robes and cried out, "Treason! Treason!" It was a strange, almost ironic accusation
you will
from a
visit
woman
your
whose
cousin
entire reign had
Joram,
been
you
built
will
on the
maintain the
treasonous
alliance I
slaughter of
have
her own
built.
family.
Do exactly as
Now
I have
crying foul
instructed.
the moment
You will
the
go
rightful
to
heir
Israel, you will
reclaimed what
visit
she
your
had
cousin
stolen through
Joram,
murder.
you will
In the
maintain the
7th
alliance
year,
I have
Jehoiada
built.
the
Do
priest
exactly as I
decided the
have
time had come
instructed.
to act. He understood that hiding the boy indefinitely was not enough, that a true restoration of David's line required not just survival but a decisive, carefully planned reclamation of the throne itself, executed in a single coordinated move with no room for hesitation or failure. He sent for the commanders of units of 100, the Carites and the guards, and brought them into the temple of the Lord, making a covenant with them and putting them under oath in the house of the Lord before he showed them the king's son at last, revealing to a trusted circle of military leaders that the heir they had assumed was dead had been alive and growing the entire time, a revelation that must have struck each of them with a mixture of astonishment and renewed hope for the kingdom's future. Jehoiada organized the guards with meticulous care, dividing them into groups assigned to different points around the temple and the palace, ensuring that no single point would be left undefended, and that Athaliah would have no opportunity to rally a counterattack once the plan was set in motion. Some were stationed to guard the temple itself, others positioned at the palace gates. Still others tasked with surrounding the young king directly, a layered defense designed to anticipate every possible way the plot could unravel. He distributed spears and shields that had belonged to King David himself, weapons kept in the temple as sacred relics of the dynasty's founding. A deliberate symbolic choice meant to remind everyone present exactly which royal line was being restored that day, and to tie this moment unmistakably back to the covenant God had made with David generations earlier. On the appointed day, the guards took their positions all around the temple, forming a protective
Imposing
ring,
wind
and
across the
Jehoiada brought
palace
out the king's
hilltop.
son,
Distant
placed
sounds
the
of
crown on
foreign
him,
idol
and presented
worship
him with a copy
rituals
of the
from
covenant,
imposing
the law
wind
of God
across
that
the
every
palace
king of Israel
hilltop.
was meant to govern
Distant
by.
sounds of foreign
A
idol
pointed
worship
contrast to the reign
rituals
of
from
idolatry
Wedding
Athaliah had
procession,
imposed
sounds
for
of
6
camel
years.
bells and donkey hooves.
They
On
anointed him
road,
and clapped their
formal
hands and
processional
shouted,
music playing.
"Long live the
At
king!"
wedding procession, sounds of
The
camel
noise of the
bells
celebration,
and donkey
the
hooves.
trumpets, the
On
shouting
road,
crowd,
formal
the sound of an
processional
entire
music playing.
restoration unfolding in
Formal
real
throne room
time
ceremony sounds.
reached
Official
Athaliah in the
proclamations.
palace,
Formal
and she came
imperial
at once to the
orchestral
temple of the
music
Lord to
playing
see
a
what was
stately
happening,
wedding ceremony.
walking
Formal throne room
directly into a
ceremony
crowd
sounds.
she had
Official
no idea
proclamations.
was about to turn
Formal
entirely
imperial
against
orchestral
her.
music playing a
Perhaps
stately
assuming at
wedding
first
ceremony.
that the commotion
Construction
was nothing
sounds of
more
a
than an
foreign shrine
ordinary
being
festival
built,
or disturbance
stone cutting
she
and
could quickly
workers,
silence
cold
with her presence
authoritative voice
alone,
directing,
as she
weak
likely had done
construction
many times
sounds of a
before
foreign
during her 6
shrine
years
being
of
built,
unchallenged
stone
rule.
cutting and workers, cold
When she
authoritative
arrived and
voice
saw the young
directing,
king standing
weak
by the pillar as was the custom, with the officers and the trumpeters beside him, and all the people of the land rejoicing and blowing trumpets, Athaliah immediately understood the magnitude of what had happened. She tore her royal robes and cried out, "Treason! Treason!" It was a strange, almost ironic accusation from a woman whose entire reign had been built on the treasonous slaughter of her own family, now crying foul the moment a rightful heir reclaimed what she had stolen through murder. Jehoiada the priest did not allow her words to gain any traction among the assembled crowd. He ordered the army officers in charge of the troops, "Bring her out between the ranks and put to the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said, "She must not be put to death in the temple of the Lord." So they seized her as she reached the place where the horses enter the palace grounds, and there she was put to death. Removed even in her execution from the sacred space she had no legitimate claim to stand in. A final deliberate statement that whatever throne she had occupied, she had never belonged in the house of the God she had spent her entire life ignoring or opposing. With Athaliah's death, Jehoiada renewed the covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people that they would be the Lord's people, and also a covenant between the king and the people. All the people of the land went to the temple of Baal, the foreign worship Athaliah had imported and promoted just as her mother Jezebel had done before her, and they tore it down, smashing its altars and idols to pieces, and they killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Worship was restored at the temple of the Lord. The boy King Joash was placed on the royal throne with great rejoicing, and the city of Jerusalem was peaceful once again, since Athaliah had been slain with the sword at the palace. Joash, who would later reign for 40 years and undertake significant repairs to the temple under Jehoiada's continued guidance, became the surviving thread that preserved the entire Davidic line, the very line through which centuries later the promised Messiah would be born, a promise that had come within a single hidden infant of being permanently severed by his own grandmother's ambition. The story of Athaliah stands as one of the darkest episodes in the royal history of Judah, a chilling demonstration of how thoroughly the corruption of one generation can be inherited and amplified by the next. She did not simply repeat her mother Jezebel's idolatry. She escalated her family's pattern of ruthless self-preservation into outright filicide, murdering her own grandchildren without apparent hesitation in pursuit of a throne she had no rightful claim to occupy alone. It is one of the few moments in Scripture where the text does not pause to offer any softening explanation, any moment of doubt or hesitation on the part of the perpetrator, only the stark fact of what she did and why. Ambition, undiluted by any remaining trace of family loyalty or restraint. For 6 years, it seemed as though her plan had worked flawlessly, as though the promise that David would always have an heir on the throne had simply failed, swallowed by one woman's hunger for unrivaled power. 6 years is long enough for a kingdom to grow accustomed to a new normal, long enough for hope to quietly fade into resignation, long enough that most of Judah likely believed the line of David, the very line carrying centuries of prophetic promise, had simply ended. But the story insists, as so many stories throughout Scripture insist, that what looks like total victory for evil can still be quietly, patiently undone. Sometimes through nothing more dramatic than a single act of courage performed in secret, a sister hiding a nephew, a priest waiting 6 years for the right moment. A covenant honored even when honoring it required tremendous personal risk and offered no immediate reward. Jehosheba's decision to hide Joash receives only a few verses in the biblical text, yet that brief, dangerous act of defiance against an unstoppable-seeming queen preserved an entire royal line, and ultimately an entire promise that stretched far beyond the borders of Judah and far beyond Athaliah's lifetime. A promise that centuries later would find its fulfillment in the birth of a king from David's line, whom Scripture identifies as the long-awaited Messiah, Athaliah's reign reminds us that power seized through violence rarely produces lasting security, however complete it may appear in the moment. She ruled for 6 years believing she had eliminated every threat to her throne, only to discover that the one heir she had failed to account for had been growing up the entire time within the very walls she could not fully control, learning the very faith and law she had spent her reign suppressing. Her downfall came not from a rival army or a foreign invasion, but from a quiet conspiracy of faithfulness, sustained patiently behind temple doors until the moment was finally right to act. A reminder that the most consequential resistance to tyranny doesn't always look dramatic while it's happening. It's a sobering story about the cost of unchecked ambition passed from one generation to another, about how easily cruelty can be normalized when it is modeled first by a parent and then magnified by a child, and an equally sobering reminder that even the most carefully constructed schemes of power can be undone by the steady, hidden faithfulness of people. The powerful never thought to fear, people who simply chose year after year in obscurity to keep a promise alive until the world was finally ready to see it.